Hi, everyone. Welcome to the How We Hustle podcast.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Tanya. And we invite you to join us in our unfiltered conversation about the real life hustle of being an entrepreneur. For more information about the podcast, check out howwehustlepodcast.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at How We Hustle Podcast, where you'll get notable quotes from our episodes and updates on live new episodes. So head over to Instagram and follow us at How We Hustle Podcast.
So Tanya and I were just talking about the allure of, the 9 to 5 and how that compares to, what we do. And we thought we got into a pretty good conversation about it, just the two of us. So we thought we would share that conversation and make a podcast out of it. I have never really had a 9 to 5 job. So that is different than you, Tanya, who has. So I think that you and I have different perspectives on which to look at that issue.
It just sounds to me, when we were just discussing, it sounds to me, Mike, like because you've never actually experienced what that feels like you have no reference point of it sounds like a mystical thing. I feel like for you, it's like a mystical thing of like going to this job. What would you say?
Yeah, I guess there's certain aspects of it that I'm sort
what
of
aspects?
wondering. I would say like the structure, the team, the social aspect of it, and the working on something bigger than yourself, Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if I worked at a company that was doing $20 million a year in sales, I just pulled that number out of the air, but that's, you're working as part of something huge. But I guess more so than that, it's just like the structure, waking up. It's almost like not having to think, you know what I mean? You go to work, you do your thing, and it's just, I'm not like gonna do that, partially because I don't think I would be able to really get a job, given that I don't have anything on my resume other than entrepreneurial experience. So a smart business owner wouldn't really give me a job. But I think that there's like, I was telling you that there's aspects of that sort of, getting a job that does entice me. And you were like, no, it's like, it's all you're just romanticizing this idea of the 9 to 5, more so than what it's actually like. It's actually a grind.
Well, it sounds like you're like romanticizing the like having people to work with and like, the how much money comes into an established business and how many people are working towards that goal together. But in reality, it doesn't. Obviously, there are great teams. I've been a part of amazing teams before. I've had amazing coworkers. But it doesn't feel like that every day. There are still like a lot of disagreements. There's a lot of people who need to make a decision for anybody to have anything changed or done. Like you have to go through so many people before you can make a decision. Like you're not very nimble the way that a one person business is. Like sometimes that can be to your detriment too, but you're not as nimble. I can't make a decision and then implement it that minute. It has to like then go through all these processes of people who need to approve it before a year later you might be able to do it or you might not. Like it's like it's a very slow moving machine. And yeah, honestly, I think at least for me, I worked for a company that, makes hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're talking about hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars at a time. You kind of lose what $1 million means. Like $1 million doesn't sound like a lot of money when you're talking about 100 millions and billions of dollars. So you kind of lose sight of that a bit, but it doesn't feel like your money. You don't get to keep it. It doesn't stay with you. Your income doesn't change depending on how much you make for the company outside of your bonus. And I think that something I was sharing with Mike earlier was that I just came back from a bachelorette, and in the bachelorette, it's interesting because a lot of people were talking about like having like an income ceiling, or like not having room for growth, or not being able to make more money at the job that they're at. And then how do you stay motivated to continue to work towards and do a great job when you know that you are already getting paid the top of what you can possibly make. So there are difficulties there too of like staying motivated. And then there are other people that feel great about not having to think about it. And so I think it's like all depends on like how you, number one, feel motivated. And I was saying to Mike, how you feel purposeful in what you do.
Yeah, I think that is a really important consideration is purpose. I think it's normal to like look at, because most people, like you were saying that I guess what we were talking about was, you were hanging out with a bunch of your peers, if you will, and like you were the odd person out because none of them really were doing what you do, what I do. They all work in the corporate world. We were actually talking about dating as well, right? We can bring that up. We were saying how like even that, in the dating world, not being part of the 9 to 5 stream is a little bit isolating and sort of separates you.
I'll be honest. What I said was I was talking to a guy and I told him that I was really looking for someone who wasn't living the 9 to 5 grind because I worked really hard to get out of the 9 to 5 grind, and dating somebody in the 9 to 5 grind would feel like I was still limited by that. Like I worked so hard to never actually get out. Because if you're with someone and you want to travel or you want to take vacation or go do spontaneous things, it's a lot harder when you have a 9 to 5 job. That doesn't exclude people who do shift work or, make their own schedule, or even like, having like an hourly wage rather than a salary or a contract or whatever it is. I just mean like a 9 to 5 salary, to me is like why I got a big reason why I got out of corporate was the vacation situation. Was not about the money. It was about like, I don't want to go to work and live my life. Literally, it's like a cycle of like, you get up, you go to work, you come home, you're exhausted. You go out to yoga or the gym, you make dinner, you go to bed. You watch TV, you go to bed. Like and then the only thing is you live for the weekend. So I don't live like that anymore. And I don't necessarily want to go back to that. And I was talking to people about it this weekend, and some of them like don't mind that. Like they enjoy that. They like not thinking about it. They like having that routine. And for me, I feel like it's very stifling. Like it suffocates me.
Yeah. So, but there is, I have at different times been tempted to, seek that out. But then, I have a conversation like that, and you kind of remind me that it's not what it's all cracked up to be. And I think the kind of person, and I don't want to like pigeonhole and say kind of, well, it sounds kind of like, it doesn't sound great when I say it that way, but it's hard to go back into that life, right? If you've been out. And I think you have to remind yourself, like, why did you get into entrepreneurship or just running your own business in the first place? Whatever the reason is that got you out is probably the same reason that's not going to make it very easy for you to go back into it.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, though, I always think, Mike, because it must be hard for you, because I have so much motivation to stay out of it because I know exactly what it was like and why I left. Whereas like you have no reference point of like, what is a 9 to 5 job like? Like, people talk about it like it's like this horrible thing. And like, I talk about it like it's like a prison cell. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I talk about it in such a negative light that for you must be like, what was so bad about it? Like, you must have so many questions about what it's like.
I think what entices me about it is being able to be part of something that's bigger than just myself, right? Like it's not.
The question is, will you feel like that? Because I personally felt like a number there.
Yeah, I've never like had a job, so it's all speculative. But yeah, I do have these feelings where it's like, I wonder what that would be like to get up in the morning and go somewhere and work with a team and
So I guess the question would be like, do you like having somebody tell you what to do?
No.
Well, I mean, at the end, because like that's what it is, right? Like somebody tells you what to say yes to, what to say no, what you can and can't do. Like, what are your guidelines for doing your job, basically, right? Like some places I'm sure provide you like with the like space to be creative. Like maybe if you're in advertising, like coming up with creative solutions, but that doesn't mean that you actually get to implement those creative solutions, right? You can come up with them all day long, but somebody else decides whether you're going to go forward with them or not. And that's when people can start to feel like suffocated, is like, I come up with all these ideas, they all get shot down. And what I'm doing here doesn't matter. At least that's how I felt. Like, it doesn't matter what I do in my job every day, because at the end of the day, they're not going to do it anyways. So, maybe I'm sure that there are great places that you can go and like people will take your ideas, or you'll be able to run with it and like have that space to do it. It just, at the end of the day, somebody tells you what you can and can't do, what ideas are good and what are not good ideas. And kind of like puts you in your place, I guess, right? Like unless you're the top executive there, unless you're the decision maker, someone else is making the decisions, which can be like a nice vacation.
Yeah, no, and I think that's sort of the problem, and the reason, like I've never really tried to get a job, and I don't really think I would, partially because of that reason. Like I romanticize this idea of getting a job as being like, someone will hire me at a startup. I'll be like the president. I'll
You could do that. You can make your own startup.
I'll have complete ability to, collaborate with others, but no one will really be my boss, and I'll be able to. I think it's really just what I'm romanticizing is being an entrepreneur, but just like with a team of other entrepreneurs. And like, I think really when I start thinking about getting a job, what I'm actually craving is something different.
Teamwork.
It's like, yeah, it's more, I'm reacting to the isolation and maybe the loneliness, if you will. I think there's a better word for it, but I can't really figure out what it is right now.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. I've looked for other words to describe it, but because you used to describe to me the loneliness thing, and I don't think that loneliness is like a good enough word to describe how it feels. But now that I'm in it, I think that it is loneliness, but it's not loneliness in the sense of like I'm alone. It's that everything, the responsibility, the decision making, the implementation, the like literally every single thing runs through you. Every single thing is your responsibility, and there's no one to just like take it off your shoulders for even a minute.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. It's just like I wish I could just outsource that a little bit, that like feeling of responsibility. I think there's something else too. Like I have a client who I'm just finishing up a book with right now. His name is Oliver, and I want to get Oliver on the podcast because he's a super interesting guy. But Oliver, I wrote a book for him. My publishing company put a book together for him, and it's called "Quit Your Effing Job." And he in this book, he basically sends the message like everyone should quit their job and start a business or whatnot. But he talked about this interesting thing where he basically, what he did is he was working a corporate job and slowly started buying houses. He lives in Florida, so he was able to buy houses for much cheaper than you and I are used to, Tanya. But the point was he started buying houses for $100,000. So he was able to buy houses for 5 to 10% down. And in doing so, he was able to create, a few $100s a month in cash flow. He kept doing it. And he got to the point where he was making enough money off that to be able to quit his job and, just focus on growing that. But my point is he explained to me when we were doing the interviews, he explained to me this feeling he had when he would sort of get up in the morning, check his emails, do his thing. And then he'd be sitting on his couch at 1 p.m., in the afternoon. And he would have this feeling that would come over him of sort of, I'm making this word up, but almost of like uselessness, like it's the middle of the day, it's 1 p.m., I'm sitting on my couch and I don't really have anything to do. Like, what am I doing wrong? And it's this sort of feeling of isolation, of loneliness. Like he's making money. He's, it's all good. He's just
a productive part of society.
He's just like feeling isolated from what everyone else is doing. And I think, the same can be said for you when you went away with your friends. Like they're all sort of consumed by, I'm trying to use my words so that I'm not like coming off as being like
an a-hole.
And judgy.
But honestly, I have to say though, Mike, like it's interesting to me because I think that you attract people who are very much like you. And when you had your old business, you used to say that all the time. Remember, I used to make fun of you all the time about your mall walking and about how you would work 15 minutes a day. And I'd be like, oh my God. And you'd be like, yeah, I read a whole book today. Once I was studying in the library and Mike came and sat beside me and just took off a book off the shelf and read it. And I was like, as if this is your life. Like you just get to do whatever you want. I'm studying for an exam I don't even care about for my job. And I think like it's interesting to me because like I feel like that's also how you felt when you were, obviously this is from the outside looking in, but like it sounds to me like that was what you would describe to me back when you had your old business.
What do you mean? Like I would describe like the struggle of that, or
like how you just felt like you had nothing to do and you were bored.
Yeah. And then I think like someone who has a job might listen to that and say like, oh, must be nice.
But, which is what I probably said.
Yeah, but it's almost like the grass is always greener, right? Like it is real. Like and we've said this before, but like the loneliness, the isolation, the feeling that you're doing something wrong because you're not doing what everyone else is doing, or you're not just always busy.
And I feel like there are like two sides to this. Maybe there are more sides to it. But like some people, what I was saying to Mike earlier, some people like are really interested in like, are like, whoa, like how'd you do that? Like, that's so cool. And other people are just like, they feel like what you're doing is somehow like a slap in the face to what they're doing. Like it somehow makes their what they chose to do different or worse. And it's like, no, it's just different. It's not like I just choose to do something different because that kind of lifestyle didn't work for me. It's like I could live in the country versus the city or the suburbs, or like where do you choose to live is the same as like how do you choose to work and how do you choose to use up your time, or what do you want to do with your life, which is how I got onto that topic of like, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to make it mean? And it's not necessarily about being cool or not cool, but I do think that people look at it as like the grass is always greener, or like I could never do that, so you must be special, or that it's like, oh, must be nice. But I think that there are struggles on both sides of the street. I always think to myself, like, the only grass that is greener is the grass that you water and feed. Like, if you want your grass to be greener, whether it's your job or your business or your social life or your relationship, like that's where you need to put your attention.
I guess like just worrying about
romanticizing the other side.
Like, I think it's normal for people that do what we do, which is like get up in the morning and then not necessarily talk to a lot of people and just do our own thing on our laptops. And maybe we talk to people, but maybe it's like through the computer, and we don't have that same feedback mechanism of getting up, going somewhere, spending a day. Like I feel like I could, if I had a job, I could wake up in the morning, have a shower, put on nice clothes, commute to my office, spend all day there, have lunch, and then even if I got nothing accomplished, I'd still feel like I worked the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what you did? You worked to pretend to be working.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that is what it is.
This false sense of satisfaction, which I think, and sometimes I crave that. Mm-hmm. It's like filling the void, right? It's so easy to fill the void when you're just consumed with busyness. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to me, like craving this like alternative lifestyle, I think it's more about just not actually wanting what I say I want. It's just about figuring out ways to fill that void more productively.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it sounds to me sometimes that you seem to be craving a lot more collaboration in your business.
I like talking to people. It's true. I do.
And so I wonder if there are other ways. Like, I think all of our desires, I was talking about this weekend too. I'm sure I've talked about it many times on the podcast, but one of my favorite books is called The Four Agreements. And, in it was, one of them is like, don't take things personally, because what people say has more to do about them than it has to do about what they actually said. That includes compliments, or what you notice in other people is typically a reflection of something you desire within yourself. So when you find yourself romanticizing a job or all these things on the other side, or like the grass being greener somewhere, really looking at like, what do I want about that? Like, what interests me, and how can I create that in my own life or business?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to do it, because, what I'm craving is not really a job, because I really would not work well under those circumstances.
But it could be like security. It could be routine. It could be teamwork. It could be wearing nice clothes. It could be a combination of those things. It could be having the same lunch period every day. It could be having that sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is just like having more people in my life, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like I'm kind of like naturally introverted, and I work well in social situations when like I'm put into situations where I meet people, but I'm not very good at like getting out of my bubble, and I have no real reason to do so.
And maybe because you are working on that book, like you're seeing how fun it is to collaborate with someone else.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's especially him, because he's
so much like you.
He and I share the same mindset, and I'm like fascinated kind of by what he's done, and not even what he's done, but by like the mindset that he has gotten him to where he is. He lists many of the same mentors that I have. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if I can work with other people, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but I think what the point is that I think it's natural to, desire what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And I think that the solution to that is kind of what you just said, to be like, well, what about that in particular? Because I think that maybe the things that you desire are not necessarily what you actually desire. Like,
when I went to go work for a freaking flower shop, and I realized that was definitely not for me, because all the things I thought would be so amazing were actually not as amazing in real life as I thought that they were going to feel. So try it out first. See what you like in it. See what you don't like. You'll learn.
Yeah, also, but like try and audit it so you can figure out, well, what am I actually craving, right? Mm-hmm. Because then you can be more deliberate in making those changes within the situation you're already in, as opposed to like needing to go get a job.
Yeah, like taking the extreme, which I'm pretty good at. But I also think that it's important to really realize that like sometimes we've just gone too far into the other direction. So sometimes it's about balancing or counterbalancing. Like I tend to go all in a lot of things that I do. I'm either all or nothing, but then eventually that all or nothing is out of balance. Like my life has become out of balance. If I'm too focused on my business and I'm not so focused on my health, then my health gets out of balance. And then if I am super hyper focused on my health, then maybe something else in my life is off balance. Maybe it's my social life that now is off balance. And then if I focus on my social life, maybe now my business. So like, it's going to be like a cycle of like going from thing to thing or balancing or focusing your attention on one thing or multiple things. But knowing that you can come back to those things. Like you don't have to have every single thing on your plate perfectly balanced. Like I don't necessarily know if anyone has it all figured out and balanced exactly all the time. But if something does go too far, then you can always pay more attention in that area. And, you know, maybe the area where you had been paying a lot of attention before, that's the thing that gets taken off your plate so that you can focus in this new area or come back to another area. So like also like being compassionate with yourself around, you don't have to have everything perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And, you know, there's always going to be a space that you desire something. That's kind of that desire, that want is what motivates us to make changes, is to grow, is to learn and try new things. So I think that noticing those desires, and even some people would call it jealousy, noticing what you're jealous of and looking at how does that relate to something I want, or what does that tell me about my own desires?
Yeah. And what can I do to, you know, maybe if like I'm desiring collaboration, well, maybe that's just a matter of like working from home less and going to a co-working space that's more social, like problem solved, you know, like if you're able to kind of really get down to what you're actually desiring, then.
And it's all worth a try. You know, you might do it and realize you don't like it, or you might do it and realize that you really love it. So there is no right or wrong. Everybody's going to be different, and what works for one person might not necessarily work for you, and what somebody hates might be something you love. So try it for yourself. Don't listen to anybody else's opinion. Go do it yourself and make your own opinion.
And that's a wrap on another episode of How We Hustle. For more information, check out howwehustlepodcast.com.